Welcome to our live event. It's Valentine Craft Week, and I have a project for you that is fairly simple, straightforward, can be made in probably pretty much just a morning or maybe a morning and an afternoon, depending on how detailed you want to go. We're working on a little Valentine project here. It can be used as a placemat. It can be part of a wall hanging. You could produce more of the hearts and link 3 of them together to make a really cute little wall hanging. You can use it as an inspiration point to jump off and come up with something of your own as you're being creative. So remember that the QR code that's going to link you to the pattern also takes you to a hub of wonderful live events that we've been having for Valentine week. So you can get into all kinds of different things. You can find some great recipes. If you're a crocheter like me, you can find a really great crochet project there and lots of other ways to be creative. I know I need a break from quilting once in a while, so I just finished up a crochet project for my newest grand, and now I'm jumping back into the stitching and the quilting things. So we are going to be working on In a Heartbeat. That's what I named this as our little quick Valentine project. One thing that whenever we're going into our patterns and we're looking for the supplies. Oh, wait, remember to jump in and tell me hello. We've got Kelly here from Arizona, Bridget from France, Linda saying hello from Alexandria, Virginia. So we've got that part of the country. We've got Connie popping in from North Dakota, the heartland, kind of in the area where I live. So remember, tell us where you're watching from. Maybe tell us what is one of the other crafts besides quilting that you take a break and get into, like I do with crochet once in a while. Just share those ideas, because you know what, as crafters, we more than likely have one or more areas of talent, and it's fun to share those and realize how broad our crafting community really is. We have Kathy saying hello from Central Illinois, and I gotta see it real quick. Oh, there. We have Bert saying hello from Lake Michigan. Linda saying hello. Fun to see wherever everyone is from. Exactly. I love it because we are not just in the United States, and we're not just in Canada. We reach to Australia. We reach all the way to South America and to Europe. It's wonderful to see the quilting community all come together and enjoy the process of being creative. So once you download your pattern, you will find that there is always a supply list of what you need to bring together. And I created my project out of fabrics that I had on hand. Now, it's always an excuse to go and buy more fabric. That's totally fine. But sometimes it's kind of fun just to dig in to see, oh, I really enjoyed those fabrics in another project. I have maybe enough left of scraps to make another item. So these were fabrics that I dug into my scraps to create. Some of them are years old, have been waiting for just the perfect thing, but it takes 4 fabrics. So when I was designing this, make sure that the one that you have the most of, you decide to maybe use as your border. I did not put binding on this. So if you decide you want to have binding, it's going to take a couple more strips to make sure that you have binding to go all the way around. So the most fabric is going to be fabric number 4. I numbered them from the center out. It's just a force of habit to start where you start stitching, starting labeling. So A, B, C, and D are the fabrics. It also will tell you how much background fabric or backing fabric you need and how much batting approximately. And you can use that out of your scraps also. Then we get into the basic supplies. The one tool that I put on there that I said optional but useful is something that I may have introduced in the past, but not everybody may be aware of it. So it took me a while to learn what this tool was for. And then when I did, I was like, oh, that's genius idea. So of course I had to buy one. We have Darylyn says hello from Western Nebraska, and Patricia from Plainsville, Ohio, and Rosalind from Maryland. Yay. Wendy says hello. Sewing exactly. so excited to watch how to make this cute pattern. So here's a tool that may be useful. It's called the add a quarter. Now you can use a regular ruler to do the same thing, but the add a quarter ruler actually has an edge, a lip along the edge. And you can hear there, it looks like just a yellow ruler, but on the back, there's a raised edge that's a 1/4 inch wide. And I'm going to show you how to use it for trimming. It comes in really helpful. You don't have to be looking for that 1/4 inch line when you go to trim. You just hook your seam on there and trim. And it was a smart invention. So whoever came up with it, the add a quarter ruler is one of those things that if you decide you want to purchase, otherwise you may use a regular ruler for that. And then it's pretty much basting spray, or you can use, I didn't put on there, glue stick just to hold the very first pieces in place. The one thing I wanted to show you, I bought a new tool. And as we as quilters love tools, yes, there's the standard seam ripper out there, but I was at a quilt show recently. I happened to go to Road to California with a friend, and I purchased a new tool. Now, this is made by Summit Wood Products. He does do hand-turned wood centers, but this one happens to be a resin, I believe. Now, it doesn't look like a seam ripper or a stiletto at this point, but it has, this is when everything is in storage. You can take out the tips on the ends and turn them around and insert them into the handle, and you have a seam ripper. You can then store that away if you're not wanting to use the seam ripper tip. And on the other end, you have this fabulous stiletto point on this end. Now, I could not take this on the plane home, and it had to be shipped by mail, and finally arrived at my home because of safety concerns. So if you happen to, you could order online, and you could get them from Summit Wood Products. They make a wonderful array of different handles. So this is my keepsake and my little fun tool for quilting, because as we all know, seam rippers are vital to anything done on a sewing machine. We always need that as a backup. Donna says hello from Northeast Georgia. Megan says, hi, I'm from Madrid. I don't know if that's Madrid, Iowa or Madrid, Spain. So I guess we'll wait for clarification, because we do have a Madrid, Iowa, spelled exactly like Madrid, Spain. Isabel says bonjour. She is from Central Africa. We are glad that you're joining us. Okay, we are going to get into making our In a Heartbeat project. Now, I decided if I was going to put together a second version, I would do pink this time. So I pulled out my pink fabrics. I decided to go with some leftover heart print that I had that has a little pink and red in it, a white background with a little pink dot. I love checks or ginghams. You can tell I always love to put in plaids, checks, stripes in my projects. And you always have to have a standby polka dot, right? So the polka dot will be my outer piece. Now, in this pattern, now some patterns that have to do with foundation paper, because you will find at the very back, I know I'm pushing you to learn something new. We've got foundation papers, okay? These are big. These are very easy to put together, very good for beginners. And those who are advanced are going to have fun, because they're like, oh, this is a dream to put together. So you'll need both of these copied. Now, if you're new to foundation paper piecing, make a couple extra copies. Keep one as your pattern. And then make a few extra so you have ones to work on. You'll need 2 for sure, but always reserve the originals to keep with your instructions. So make sure that you make copies of those. One's a left and one's a right, so you'll need both of those. And then what you'll need to do is cut those out. I'm going to have you prep all the paper here. You'll cut that out. Bubble cut means outside of that outermost line. Don't cut on the line yet. And then go back and fold on all of the lines between different sections. Remember I talked about the fabric, so it's A, B, C, D. There's a code on this. A, B, C, D will give you the placement of each of the colors. Then the numbers on these will tell you the order that they are constructed in order to put them together. So remember, the ABCs are for the different fabrics, and then the numbers denote the order or sequence of construction. And you'll need to go and fold on all of the lines within this design. Now, I know there are different ways of doing foundation paper. This is a very traditional one method. This is the method that I learned. I'm trying to learn the freezer paper method, but haven't quite gotten there yet. So I'm still actually stitching through the paper to do mine. One thing that can aid you while you're doing your folding is to put a ruler right along the line and then crease the paper from underneath. Another way to do it is I just turn back and press till I see that line. And then once I see the line, I make a crease on the line. Make sure you crease it in both directions. It weakens the paper there. Oh, another tip. When you go to print your pattern, your foundation papers, don't use the most expensive paper. Use the lighter weight paper so that it falls apart easier when you go to remove the paper. That's just a little helpful tip along the way. Jackie says hello from Tennessee. She also enjoys scrapbooking and card making. Great. Megan says, I live and learn from Spain. And Elizabeth says hello from Central Illinois. So it was Madrid, Spain. That's fabulous. Okay, once you get this all creased on all of the lines, it's going to look a little crinkled, but that's okay. That's the way we need to prep it. And then in your instructions, it will tell you how, what size to cut each of the fabrics. Now, these are not exact cuts. These are oversized to fit on top of each of those denoted sequence areas, because some patterns will just have you figure it out yourself. You have to cut strips or chunks, and it's kind of by guess and by golly. I don't like those kinds of patterns. I like a little bit more order. So here we go. Fabric A, and I put them in bags, so I kept them in order. So I remember these are all the A pieces, and I cut through those. And then a bag for B, and you can figure out where I'm going here. Those are all B, C, and D, so that I'm ready to sit down to the machine and put my heart shape together, or my half a heart together, because you're going to do the left one side and then the other in the same. So you're going to cut two of everything as you go. So as I was cutting my pieces, for instance, under fabric A1, I cut two that are 4 by 6, and I made 2 piles. And I kept dividing them up so that one was for the left side and one was for the right side, because I'm just going to use one pile at a time. So I've already used up all of my left side. It's already constructed over there. We're going to do the other side to match. So here we go. We're going to jump into the construction. I'm going to get my A fabrics out first. And the nice part about having them pre-cut is if you get interrupted, they're all together in here, so that, oh, I've got all the A's maybe used. Well, you won't use all of them right away, but you'll know which letter you're on, because the bag will be depleted in the pieces that are in there. So as I take my pieces out to start, I can lay them out and see the different sizes. Because some people will ask, well, if you cut all the sizes, you have to label them independently. And not really. You have a ruler on your mat. So if you have a mat near you, you can always lay them on the mat at a glance to see this is 4.5 or so by 6. So I know that that's my A piece. Now, they don't have to be exactly, say, 4 by 6. This one's almost 4.5, but that's okay. As long as it's big enough. Don't go on the smaller side, but make sure that they're big enough to fit over your different shapes that we have there. Let's see. Bridget says, I crochet and only recently gave up spinning her own wool. That sounds fabulous. There's so many creative outlets for us that it's fun to hear what other people get involved in. So, okay, we're going to start. The side with the lines, that's the side we're going to sew on. Your fabrics are all going to appear on this back side of the paper where the white is. So those crease lines kind of give you an indication of, okay, it has to cover those creases. So 1A, this is my 1A fabric. I'm going to put it on the back side. I need the pretty side facing out so that I have that covering the A1 side. And sometimes holding it to the light will give you a line so you know you have it covered. Make sure it goes all the way to the outer edge of the paper. We don't want it to be short though, because that's our seam allowance for constructing the halves of the heart when we go to put it together. So we need that seam allowance around the outside. I know. How do I know? Because I took a class once at the very beginning of how to do this. And I cut all that off and I had to start over. I thought I was trimming. Yeah, I was trimming, but I was trimming on the stitching line, not leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So don't do like I've done. Do better. Okay. Okay. We have Jackie, who says the adorable, she adores the freezer paper method. That's great. I can't wait to figure it out completely. I tried the other day and I got frustrated. So I need to start over again and watch a video and learn how to do it, or ask a friend. Okay, we're going to place that first piece. And you can see your crease lines when you have yours in front of you. I'm going to put just a little bit of fabric glue stick in that area. And then I'm going to place my fabric. Now you can pin that if you like. That's totally fine. Some people would rather have just that little bit of glue stick so it doesn't shift around. Then making sure that the right side is facing outward. You're going to go back to your side that has the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. We have fabric A in place. Now we're going to go to the B's. So guess what? The rest of the A's go back in the back. Now we take out our B fabrics. And we lay those out because we're going to use all of the B's right away now. And I'm going to lay them out so that I can see the different sizes. Sometimes it's easiest to just do, kind of shortest to tallest right beside you so you can reference it as you go through your paper. Now I need to have my B listing in front of me. That's why we print patterns. Also, you can use it on your tablet. You can use it on your laptop, however works best for you. Having your B fabrics ready, we are going to put the second piece in place. So B, it's called B2. I'm going to fold back on the line between A1A and 2B. So I fold back on that line. This is why we pre-crease. So it's ready to go. I'm going to use my add a quarter ruler. And I am going to put that rim of my little ruler right on the fold of the paper. And you can hear it just slides right up against it. You can use just a regular ruler. What we want to do is trim so that's about a 1/4 inch seam allowance there of fabric left behind for putting the pieces together. Now I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to extend the paper back. I'm going to take the B2, which is 1 1/4. All the strips in this one are 1 1/4 by 3. And that there are 2 that are about the same size. So we're going to take this one. I think this one is supposed to be shorter because I needed to take selvage off it. Make sure you don't end up with selvage in your project. That's not fun to have all those little dots or maybe some obscure writing pop up in your piecing. Now, because we cut these, they're straight on the sides. We know that we will have, those will line up, and we're putting them right sides together. So the little dotted fabric is against the heart. I'm lining it up on that piece where I just cut. I'm going to hold it in place and flip it over. Then I'm going to go back and peek to make sure that it stayed in place. And I'm going to move it to the machine, holding those fabrics in place. I'm going to peek one more time to make sure nobody moved out of place. I have my needle in the center position because I'm just going to be following the lines on the paper. And I forgot to note in the pattern, shorten your stitch length because it makes the paper come off easier if you're doing this method. Normally our machines are set at 2.0, take it down to a 2.8, 2.6, somewhere in there, so that your shorter stitch length will perforate the paper better for removal later. And you're going to stitch on that line all the way to the outer edge. That will secure the first piece. Let me take my scissors and take this out. Okay, I stitched between 1A and 2B, that line right there. This is the line I stitched on. Now, when I turn it, putting the paper down on the table, I'm going to press my fabric out where I stitched at to cover that area. And I'm going to finger press as I go. You can go to the iron to press each little piece if you like, but these are short seams and they finger press fairly well. Just make sure that you open it all the way to the seam. Don't leave a false ditch in there or the fabric may not cover completely. I tried to get them big enough so they should cover, but always make sure you move that all the way out to the edge or out to the seam. Barbara says, I missed what kind of paper to use for the foundation. You can use, I use very inexpensive printer paper in my printer. You can purchase special paper foundation papers at local quilt shops and online. I tend to use just very inexpensive printer paper that will fall apart easily. I can print on it, it'll fall apart easily. I've tried I've had the better paper in my printer, and that takes a lot to get the paper out. So we really want to use the cheaper, lighter weight paper. So I did trim that and didn't say too much there. Fold back on fold back on the next section you want to put sequence in. So 3B, we're going to fold back on that line. I trimmed the other one, the other line on the side of that. It's okay that I trimmed it because it will be ready when I get to it. But what we need to do is go in sequence. Talk less, so more. So I'm folding back on 3B because 3 is the next one. I've got 1 in place, 2 in place. We need to put 3 in place. So the line next to 3B. So I'm leaving a seam allowance approximately there. We don't need all this extra fabric. We just needed enough to cover the shape, okay? So now as I extend the paper and lay this back down, this is the edge I'm going to cover next. And that one needs to be a 3.5 inch piece. It's just a little bit longer. I'm going to line this up. And keep in mind that I just need to cover the that little next section. It doesn't need to go all the way out to the edges, just the next area. So there are times when we put a piece in place and we flip it back later and it's too short or it's shifted to one side. We learn that, but that's why we have seam rippers. You can take it out at least once before the paper gets destroyed. So try to double check, maybe even fold up to make sure, yes, it will cover the area that I want it to. Now, holding that in place, it's a little bit of a maneuver. Get that to the machine and stitch on the line for piece number 3. And that joins, we're going to do the top part of the heart complete there, so that we're doing the first round of that center portion. Now, don't worry about back stitching or over reinforcing because we're going to crisscross our seams as we go and everything will be secured. And then you're going to quilt it after that. So everything does hold up very well. So we've got this piece in place. Okay, I'm going to score that. And you know what? I did slide it to one side too far. That's when the seam ripper comes out and we can have a little discussion about how to take it out properly. Wasn't exactly my plan, but here we go. Sue says, thank you for the tip on the paper. Cheap printer paper sounds great to me. You can buy it at the dollar store. Let's see. We have a YouTube comment says, more money for fabric that way. Exactly. And this is how we tear out when we have to remove something, is very carefully use your seam ripper to, you don't want to pull on this because the paper is going to be weakened because of your fold. You just go in and cut about every 3rd or 4th stitch. There's always that time for the perfect demo, right? And by just cutting the stitch, you will make it so that we can just unzip the seam very carefully and keep the paper intact. And you can either cut the seams from the fabric side or from the paper side. Either will work. It just kind of depends on how tight the tension on your machine is. So once you get about every third stitch in play cut, you can take the other thread from the back side and literally just pull it like a zipper and take it apart. And then you have that chance now to reposition your fabric so that you do make sure you cover the entire shape before you put it back together. Usually once you mistakenly slide it to one side too much, you won't do that again. So we reposition and make sure we're going to cover all of the side here. And trust me, it happens to all of us, even those who are more experienced at foundation paper. There's always that time when you think, oh, I've got it in the right place, and then definitely don't. So it happens to everyone, so don't feel bad if you go to start on it and you're like, oh, I shifted my piece to the wrong side. Okay, this time we've got it in the right place. Get that pressed open. Now we're going on to piece 4, and we're going to turn back the paper. We're going to trim. Remember, I did cut the fabrics large so that we made sure that we covered everything. And I kind of wanted to make sure that no matter how you positioned your first rectangle, you would still have the ability to keep going to get everything pieced. So the next piece on, looking for those markings of your folds, double checking. One of the easiest things to do is to hold it to the light to make sure that you're covering the area. A window, a light box, a light table, a light mat tablet that I like, the one I've used, works great. So once you get it positioned, paper piecing is with the pre-cut pieces does make it go together more quickly. It does take a bit of time if you're brand new to the process to kind of get it figured out that your fabrics, you don't see them when you're stitching. And for most of us as quilters, we're very visual, and it can be a little bit distracting or disturbing at first to think about everything is on the bottom and I can't see what I'm actually doing. But because you can create such wonderful fun shapes and designs with paper foundation, it can be fun and it can be kind of relaxing once you get kind of into the rhythm. I know my daughter tried it years ago, and at first she thought, well, if mom can do that, I should be able to do that. And she sat down and then she came back later and says, that takes some concentration. But once you figure it out, then it goes together fairly well. Now, always remember, right sides together as you're placing your pieces so that you can position and get it ready to stitch. I'm looking at the fold lines on my paper there and make sure that I have it positioned. It may run off the outer edge. That's totally fine. You're going to trim up this section when you have the entire thing covered with fabric. So don't worry about trimming in the outer edge at this point. I'll show you one that is partially created, or half, the other half that's already done. But once you get one round done, I'll show you quick. There we got one round on there. So the center heart, half of a heart, starts to appear. And yes, this is messy out here. We're going to trim that later. Then you just keep going in the same sequence. I just put on number 5. Now we're going to bag C, the letter C fabric, and we're going to go to 6, and we're going to keep going in the same sequence around and around until you get to the outer edge, and all of a sudden it says A again. Remember, we didn't use everything in bag A? Go back to A. The A pieces, see how the center is repeated out here on the edges, and this is an edge too, but on half. So those are going to bounce back to the outer edge unless you pick a 5th fabric, but I use the same as the center as your background there. So you have a good contrast. You see the heart shape pop out. Once you have your entire foundation covered with all your pretty fabrics, this is what you're going to have on one half. See, I told you, it's messy on the outer edge. We have to go ahead back and clean up that edge. Let's see. Patricia says, cutting from the bobbin side makes it easier. Cutting from the bobbin side. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'll have to think about that a second. Deborah says she's from Westminster, South Carolina. And Wendy says, love the quilt behind you. That's one of my original creations from a retreat that happened during COVID. So it's kind of nice to have that, a place to bloom, I think is what I called it. Okay, once you have an entire half, and you can wait until you get both of the halves done, then you need to go back, give it a good press, and then trim that outer edge. So that's why I said leave that part intact, leave that seam allowance out there so you can go back and now make sure that you are cutting on that very outer edge. You're going to take away all those little extra fluffs along the outer edge so that you have one half of the heart, and then trim the second half so that you can join them together. I think once you start doing some of these kinds of projects, you kind of get addicted to, it's a little less stressful than having to try and create perfect flying geese units or square in a square units, all of those, and worry about your points, because by following the line on the paper, you get those points. Those will all be there just like magic. So here's half of our heart. And then once you have both halves created, that's why you need both of the pieces, left and right, so that you can join these together to create your block. Now, because this is foundation paper piece, I'm not taking the paper out until I join these together and put my border on. And why is that? When you trim on this outer edge, all of that edge is going to be bias, because we're not really thinking about straight of grain or anything when we're putting our pieces in sequence. We're just putting strips on. So this is going to be all bias here on the outer edge. And we don't want to remove the paper until we put something straight of grain up next to it, or another block up next to it, which stabilizes it. So once you get your border pieces put on, that's when you go and take away your paper on the back side. Now I'm going to remove it just a little bit at the very center so you can see how that process looks. But I don't want to take away this outer edge at all yet, because I need that paper to kind of act as a grounding spot, so that as I join this to my border, I don't stretch those pieces accidentally, because it's very easy to distort all those little bias edges along the outside and then have something that ends up being a little bit wonky. Let's see. No more extra comments. Okay, so when it comes to taking out the paper, I'm going to just remove the very center one here so that you can see what the process looks like. And it is a bit messy. Yes, I understand. And sometimes I will go in with my fingernail and kind of just score along, and you can hear it tear along the seam line. The seam is acting kind of like the skeleton to the block. It's holding its structure. But by just scoring along that with my fingernail, I can loosen up that paper so that I can easily remove it. And all those dots of the holes from that your needle created perforates the paper so that it comes out fairly easily. Now, there are times when it doesn't come out perfect, but that's the removal of the paper from the back. You'll take all the paper out when you're done. But again, once you have the block constructed to its other half and put the borders on, the borders are put on side to side, the sides first, and then the top and bottom, so that you can create your overall little mat or wall hanging. However, if you want to use this as a wall hanging, you can always attach loops to the back side that you could put a dowel rod through to hang this. You could add loops at the top if you have a system for hanging other projects and you want to just change out holidays possibly. This Could also be increase the outer borders maybe just a little bit. You could even make it into a pillow very easily. So versatile block can be used in many ways to create that holiday fun little project. Remember that the QR code that has been put into the comments will take you to all of the Valentine Craft Hub of wonderful creative projects for our event this week. And we are so glad that you joined us. Thanks for joining me for In a Heartbeat.